How to.
So this is a short sort of overview on how to solder. It is straight joints, wire joints, T-joints and the crimp connectors that I used in the last video. It is a bit bitty because it was filmed over a couple of days, so it's a bit chop and change and a bit of voicing over and stuff, but I finally got around to editing and hopefully getting back on my NOTaMOD channel as we're all on lockdown at the minute in the UK, so hope you enjoy this, guys.
Okay, so what you're going to need for soldering is obviously a soldering iron. I've got a little stand because this is glass. Heat gun just for the heat shrink afterwards. I've used this because of the fact that this is glass. This is just some 5 amp wire that I picked up from the auto parts store in where I live. Wire strippers, your solder. This is rosin core, I think, and then we have heat shrink. Okay, so now that you know everything that we need, I will show you how we get started. So firstly, we're going to need to trim 2 pieces of wire and trim the end off of one on each piece of wire. So the best way I've found is if you split the fibres apart of the wire, it's much easier to mechanically join the wires. If you interlock them and then twist so they basically fibre together like they do in the normal cable, it is much stronger than if you just solder them together. After this, grab your solder and soldering iron, and then the technique I find that's best for this is you make contact with the soldering iron and then slide it off onto the area you wish to solder. That is your finished soldering joint. Now if this is dry, that is definitely not going anywhere in your car. Last thing is heat shrink. Bang that over the top. This protects the cable both from rubbing and from water. So with that straight joint done, now we're going to move on to a wide joint, because obviously if you've got one cable going into 2, like you've got 2 lights on your headlights or anything like that, especially like the Plymouth does, then those sort of joints can definitely come in handy. So same principle for all of them that I do, just because I feel like if the cores or the fibres are all intertwined, they're 100% not going to be going anywhere. So if you can manage to get around that, so these are your 2 that will be going off to your headlights. Go like that, and twist that together, and pull that apart slightly. Now this one, that's why we've cut this one extra long with a big amount of the end, so that I can go like this. Wrap the incomers fibres around each branch and then wrap the remainder around the base. This not only makes a great electrical connection but also creates a very strong mechanical connection. So you do have a nice muddle of wires that are all very well held together already before you've started adding solder to it. I would personally hold it down and then just brush onto the soldering iron like that, and as you can see, it puffs out. And then you can add more and or maneuver around. It's like a bubble, so it kind of feels and or acts like a bubble. So you can kind of just scooch it around with soldering iron itself. I'd definitely be generous with it. I mean, you know, you get a lot for your £7 or whatever, so I would definitely just keep adding it.
Continue to repeat this process of just adding more solder, and then flip it over and continue on the other side. Yes, I am getting very close to the iron here, and here's a top tip.
Yes, I have burnt myself on it, and yes, it just takes your skin off, so definitely avoid that like the plague. God, this one's a bit messy, isn't it? But if you do manage to, you know, mount it up like this in the wrong sort of spot, you can obviously reheat it. You know, it is still just solder, it's just a bit dried. So if you keep adding heat to it, it will just keep going, and then it will melt again. You should get something like that. With something like this, I would probably use a bigger sort of heat shrink, just to make sure that it covers over that big joint, and also you can manage to get in both of these cables. You know, I would probably have positioned these a bit better, because obviously they're both at right angles. So when I actually started soldering, I probably would have gone like that. So then what you can do is slot it over like so. And then,
moving on to T-joints, it is similar to the straight joint, where you just need 2 pieces of wire. Firstly, you'll need to trim the end off of one, and then cut a mid-section of the insulation off of the other. To cut out the midsection, I scored 2 lines the entire way around the wire, about 1 centimetre apart, and then scored a line between those 2, and then peeled off the insulation. Similar to before, I spread apart the fibres of the straight cable, and then twisted the cable in which I took the section out of, so the fibres unravelled. Then I slotted the straight cable in between them, twisted on the other side of it, and then re-twisted the fibres of the straight cable together. Then repeat the process of soldering over the joint on the front and on the back. Once you start, you do get a sort of feel for it, and then pretty much the mechanical side of it of actually turning the cables together is the only issue, because soldering itself is exactly the same no matter what you're doing. Okay, so if you are going to do this yourself, basically out of this kit that I have linked below, is you're going to need 2 of the little yellow rubber connectors. You're going to have a male and a female. You can have this one's just an example, so I'm using a 2, but in the actual thing I used a 5. Well, I'm just going to use this one that you saw in the video a minute ago, and you're going to need some heat shrink. I use short and long nose pliers, but long nose pliers will do. A wire stripper, and a knife is always handy, or Stanley knife is always handy, as well as a soldering iron and the resin core as well, basically solder, and a heat gun. Firstly, add a rubber grommet and heat shrink to the cable. The process is similar for both
female and male connector. This is the female connector, so we firstly clamp down the outer prongs onto the insulation of the wire, and then move on to the inner prongs, which clamp down onto the fibres of the cable to ensure a good electrical connection. Then for security, as this will obviously be moving around quite a lot, I wanted to ensure the electrical connection, so soldered the connector onto the wire. Once you've completed this, you add the connector to the waterproof housing. This can take some convincing, so long nose pliers will be of assistance. I found the best course of action was to heat the heat shrink around the grommet and then push the grommet into the socket of the waterproof connector to ensure a nice tight seal around there. This then protects the cable from dust as well as from water. So then we move on to the male connector, which is literally identical to the female connector. The only difference I've found was that when entering the waterproof socket, you can actually access it from inside the socket to help pull it in.
Concludes our how-to. Please like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if you have any ideas for my next how-to could be, then please comment down below. Thanks guys, see you later.